everybody. Welcome to Fan Made, the show where we talk to some of the most exciting names in the sports and entertainment world who are diehard passionate fans just like you and me. Today, we're going to break down some of the best game memories and fan history and some fun traditions around going to games with Robin Lundberg, who you might know from a national standpoint, a local standpoint from ESPN radio, CBS, and now you can find him with Sports Illustrated doing digital content. And this is a man who's known for his NBA, NFL, and all sports hot takes and opinions. I'm your host, Lou Porco, but we're speaking with Robin Lundberg. Robin, great to have you on, man.
Yeah, no, thank you. Been around the block, as you said, whether it's interviews, takes, from radio to TikTok. I've run the gamut there.
Yeah, you're all over, man. You've been evolving as it's been going on because you started radio, now you've gone digital, social media, and love to see your content and been killing it from start to finish. But since this show centers around going to games, my first question I like to ask everybody is, what was the first sporting event you went to, and do you have any like fun stories around that, or you remember who you went with?
I can't remember necessarily the first game I went to. I'll tell you the first game I remember going to, because it was a painful story in the sense that when I was a kid, I really liked David Robinson. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because it was Robinson. I don't know what, when you're a kid makes you gravitate toward a particular player. But there was an ice storm where we lived. And where we lived it's Lusby, Maryland. It's 15 minutes from nowhere, meaning it was an hour and a half to where the Wizards played. I don't know if they were the Bullets or the Wizards at the time, but they were playing the Spurs. And we braved this ice storm, the weather to get there. Turns out David Robinson had a bad back, didn't play in the game. This is load management with the Spurs. But, it was a tough experience to brave the elements like that, get there, and then he doesn't play in the game.
Oh, that's the worst. Yeah, like you mentioned that whole now today you see that with load management, but this was way before that. But you even had to find out the hard way about stuff like that. But hey, it led you to being a basketball fan this whole time out. And while that may have been a heartbreaking first introduction, do you remember the most exciting sports memory you've witnessed in person? Like any championships, any record broken?
Yeah, so a few. One, I was at the University of Maryland when they won the national championship. I wasn't at that specific game, but I was there for that period of time. There was the Maryland Duke games. I was in the building for the gone and I think it was 54 seconds game. Jay Williams, the Maryland was up 10, I think, over Duke, 8 to 10 points, under a minute left. Duke comes back to win the game. That was a tough loss. That was the year Maryland lost to Duke in the Final Four after blowing a big lead. Then they went and won the championship the next year. Some games that were memorable. One was actually a random Knicks-Nets game in February, I believe it was. The reason it was memorable is I was at the Super Bowl. I did back-to-back Super Bowl trips with Ryan Rucco, who I used to do the midday show with on ESPN, and we did this drive to Dallas bit where we drove to Dallas, and then the next year Super Bowl was in Indy. But a lot of times when you cover the Super Bowl for Media Week, you wind up flying back that Friday, and I did that to do pregame for the Knicks on a Saturday. Knicks were playing the Nets. It was Darren Williams' Nets. The reason that game was memorable, it was the first Linsanity game. And I remember standing next to Dan D'Antoni as he's talking to Jeremy Lin, who's doing a quad stretch, and says, maybe be ready tonight. So that was a cool one. Another real cool one was the Nets-Bucks game 7, the Kevin Durant put on the 3-point line game. Obviously, if you're rooting for the Nets, that was a tough one, but maybe the best game I've ever seen in person. I did a mock broadcast for the Warriors, NBC, their affiliate out in the Bay Area there, because they were testing some new technology around the game where Steph Curry broke the 3-point record at Madison Square Garden. Yep. That was another cool one. So those are probably, I would say. And then, a couple other times at Madison Square Garden, it wasn't through the it wasn't like games as much as individual performances, but I was also there for back-to-back huge. Kobe had scored 60-something against the Knicks. In the next game, LeBron had a 50-point triple-double, and I rode the freight elevator with Jay-Z after that game. So,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like with Nick games, like you're either gonna, you see a good performance or you'll just run into somebody like, notable, even if it's like Spike Lee or just like celebrity or something, because I feel like it could go either one way. Like you either get a crazy performance or you'll just like just have some crazy memory of some sort to take back with you. And like you mentioned, like you got to go to a lot of these events with like through working with ESPN radio, like doing stuff with the Super Bowl, Ryan Ruocco. And how did you like get started work? Because I know this I saw that you were with like did like internship with Around the Horn.
Yeah,
And
so that was that in many ways that was the start of my career where I when I was in school I was working at the student radio station and I applied for an internship at Around the Horn, and maybe what I was doing with the student radio station helped get me that job, and that was a cool experience working on. I think that helped my producer mind working on the day-to-day rundown for a show like that and putting that show together. That was in adjoining rooms with PTI. So obviously, seeing Wilbon and Kornheiser in their element, developing a relationship with Max Kellerman, who was the host at the time, running out to get Tony Reality's suit the first day he was guest hosting Around the Horn because Max had a dental emergency. I believe I had to run to Tony's apartment to grab his suit. So yeah, there's some memories from that. That crew went on to do a show on Fox Sports, which I left for to work in New York. And then I was doing that for a bit before I had a stint on unemployment, waiting tables, doing open mics at stand-up comedy clubs, and eventually getting my foot back in the door at ESPN Radio, and the winding road that my career has been since.
nice. Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm glad it all worked out and you're able to kind of get come full circle in a sense, like get back with ESPN after interning and then, seeing where your career's taken off. And again, like I've noticed about your like, being on social media, you've always been one to, interact with a lot of fans. Like, I mean, granted, you get a lot of, outspoken fans who like to argue, but yeah, I've always noticed about you, like you've always been like, giving the like whether it be quote tweeting somebody or like, you've always been one to like give kind of like the fans like a voice in a sense. And I've always like, what kind of goes like, is that just something you just do without thinking about, or is that like something you do on purpose? Like, I've always felt like you've been like one to communicate because you don't always see that with everybody like in sports media, but
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a few things. Number one is, anytime you're showing the audience you're going to engage with them, I think that's more likely to develop a personal connection. Two, it's just fun for me. Who doesn't like, a debate or going back and forth? I have fun with that. And then three, I'm not trying to make myself sound good or anything. This is just honest. I'm not any better than fans. Just because of what I do for a lot of people have cool jobs, they do cool things, or even if you don't have a cool job, you got a cool story, you're doing something. There's nothing about oh, wow, I can have, a camera pointed at me or a microphone and I could say something. It doesn't make me any better than anybody else. So I've never seen myself. Maybe that's also like I came up as a producer. So I was always more comfortable in the room with the producers than the room with the talent, like talent. And so I've just never seen, myself as on some sort of pedestal compared to the fans. So why wouldn't I go back and forth? That's fun.
yeah, no, it is. It seems fun, and except like I always feel like a lot of Knicks fans kind of come at you and see you as like critical of their team, even though you just. I feel like most of the time, like I feel like you're just like calling it like it is, but I feel like a lot of like certain teams fans will like call you out on certain things, even though you're just kind of being honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had Carmelo record a drop for me back in the day. Knicks fan, please leave him alone because the Knicks fans really did get on me. I can't say there isn't a part of me that hasn't trolled fan bases here and there over the years, but for the most part, I'm just seeing it how I see it. And if you notice, that hasn't happened with Knicks fans of late because I haven't had anything bad to say about the Knicks.
Yeah, exactly.
If you got when there
Mhm.
was a lot of bad things to say about the Knicks, I had more bad things to say about the Knicks, and therefore you got that. Now that there's
They're
nothing bad
playing
to say,
well.
I'm not just making up bad things to say about the Knicks because I have no vendetta against your team.
Hmm. Yeah. It's true. Yeah, no, Knicks have turned it around and it's good to see. And that's like, I feel like going back to being a fan, like I feel like, when even if you're not like I'm a Knicks fan, but even when if you're not a big fan, I feel like when the Knicks are good, like I feel like the NBA, like especially being in New York, like everybody there's kind of like a better energy in the air. And I feel like when the Knicks are playing well, I feel like New Yorkers as a whole and like everything there's more positivity in the air for sure. And with my next question with that, what's the best, like it could be an NBA, it could really be in any sport, but what's the best arena you've been to? Like,
That's a good question. I mean, old Cole Fieldhouse at Maryland was cool. It had its own vibe. Madison Square Garden, like that's one of the places where the renovations have really gone a long way. I think Barclays has its own personality. I think both basketball arenas in New York are cool. Is there a place that I'm trying to think of an away team where I've been? I did all the ACC teams when I was in school. But yeah, I mean, I got to give it to MSG. Just the energy of that building, the history of that building. I don't like
yeah,
MetLife. I mean,
yeah,
I like
yeah.
MetLife that it holds a lot of people, but as other than that, I don't really like MetLife.
Yeah, fair enough. And other than like what city, like outside of other than New York, obviously, like what city do you think has the best like basketball fans and or like just best like arena and like vibe outside of like New York or
Um, Best arena and fans. I mean,
just overall?
all those college fan bases are very passionate. So in the
Yeah.
Carolinas,
Mm-hmm.
those basketball fans,
Oh
there
yeah.
that was always Duke and North Carolina.
North.
That's something to behold. When you go down south, like the Clemsons of the world, stuff like
Mhm.
that. Those college, when you're just talking fan atmospheres, you really the college fans are on a different level, especially in some of those places where they don't really have the big market pro teams.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's true. And I feel like in those college landscape, like I feel like sports is really like where you see the strongest rivalries. Like, yeah, you get it in like pro sports as well too, but I feel like college is like you said, like that's their main sport. Like they don't, especially if they don't have a big four sports team, like that. I feel like the college rivalries are like so much stronger than like like more prevalent than you see in the pro sports. And who's your like, it could be NBA like best player like NBA or like college or like, what's the best player like you've seen live and like what like who's right now like who is your favorite player to see live?
I mean, LeBron James is the best player I've ever seen in any sport.
Yeah.
Saw him when he was younger with the Cavs. Obviously, I've seen him since he's gotten older and played the Heat and the Cavs again, and now the Lakers. I would say LeBron James for sure. It was cool being in the building for Steph and what I said before. Calling that game. A remarkable 101 talent is Steph Curry also. Um, Beyond that, I'm trying. I mean, it's going to be those two guys. I would say are the two best that I've seen.
Nice. Yeah, no, those, even as a fan, like, especially, I feel like if you're close, you know, close to the core or even farther, like, you get a sense of like better, like, you appreciate it better. Like, seeing their, they're great, but once you see them live, I feel like it's, puts it in a completely different stratosphere. And, yeah, and just this is another like question I like to ask. It's more of a hypothetical. If you could go to any game, whether it be like, it doesn't even have to be basketball, like any like sporting event with any three people, they could be famous, they could be non-famous. What game are you going to, and who are you taking?
So you're talking about like going back in time to
No,
an
no, I'm saying like just
or
like an event, like going to like
going to
NBA,
yeah,
NFL, it could be any
yeah,
team, any
yeah, yeah.
sport.
All right, so I'm going to a baseball game because there's more open space to talk
Hmm.
in this scenario that you're presenting. Not for
Hmm.
like the fan experience, but I'm gonna go, I'll go to Yankee Stadium with Jay-Z, LeBron
Hmm.
James, and who's the third? Barack Obama.
Nice. Yeah, no, and I feel like those three, like, I mean, like, they've hung out in the same circles, so
Yeah, they know
maybe
each
it
other
could,
a little bit, so
yeah, so maybe, one day they'll
yeah.
bring Robin Lundberg with them to the Yankee game. Yeah, no, and then just one last question as like being covering the games, but also just going to games as a fan. Like, if you were to tell somebody like who's going to their first, NBA game, whether it be like at like let's say hypothetically like someone going to the Garden their first time, for a Knick game, what are like some, tips and tricks that you'd recommend before like checking out the arena or just going to a game in general?
I think if you're in New York and you've never been in New York, you want to go like away from the tourist spots. You want to go Central Park is cool, and obviously like the Village. check that out. But I mean, I think sometimes especially going with like the Barclays with my kids, or my son especially, I like getting there a little earlier nowadays, rather so you can just sort of walk around and relax. But I'm about to be in that same scenario. So he and I are going to WrestleMania in
Oh,
Philadelphia
nice.
coming up at the Link. So if any Philly fans are listening, let me know what we should check out when we go to do
Yeah,
that.
no, that's gonna be cool. And that, I don't know if you've ever been out to Phil, like the Link or any of the arenas stadiums out there, but like they have they're all pretty much in the same like parking lot area. So it's like you just like the baseball stadium's right here, then the Link, then the Wells Fargo Arena. So it's all in the same area, which is pretty sick.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, and the crowd is such a part of the experience when you're at a wrestling show. So that's gonna be a fun part of it too.
Yeah, 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 for sure. And hope you guys have a great time out there. And before we just wrap things up, I just want to give you a chance to, if you want to promote anything or, tell people where to find you or
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, the work I've done at SI and Sirius, Mad Dog Sports Radio, but my own social platforms, I'm at Robin Lundberg on Twitter, the Robin Lundberg everywhere else, which is TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all those places.
Great. Well, there you have it. He's Robin Lundberg. He's fan made. Thanks to Robin for joining. Thanks to everybody listening. Please give us a follow, like, subscribe on Instagram and YouTube at Fan Made Podcast and on X at Fan Made with LP. Robin, thanks again for having us.
You got it, man. Take it easy.